Hello, my name is Chris Cheen. I'm the SOC Director and CTO of SecurityHQ, and I'm here today in the London SOC. But on the line with me, I've also got the team in Pune from our Global Security Operations Center. Hello, Sanket and team.
Hello guys, welcome to the live webinar of Supercharge your firewall with a 24/7 managed firewall service. I am Sanket Khanolkar, the CEO of SecurityHQ, and I'm here reporting live from our Global Security Operations Center in Pune, India. With me, I have Dio, who is our manager for the Global Security Operations Center and heads the operations here. And I have Aniket Kulkarni with me, who leads the managed firewall team for us.
So we launched a LinkedIn poll recently with the idea of exploring exactly how well managed people's next generation firewalls are, because we all know that next generation firewalls are incredibly powerful. They've got a lot of features, but we wanted to know, how hardened are they and how well optimized are they, and are we using all the available security features? So we asked a question on a scale of 1 to 10, 2 being very basic. So, basic deployment, you put the box in, you plugged it in, you've got some basic policies in place, right the way through to the other end of the spectrum where you're using potentially the full range of the features, you've done their testing and hardening, you have full confidence that box is going to detect and prevent some of the more sophisticated threats and attacks. So we put that question out to the industry, and these are largely security professionals who are polling against this. And here's some of the results that we got back. So at number 2, 57% of people said that it's basic. We've put the box in. We've invested thousands in the box. Great next generation firewall, not using any of the features, no hardening. That's 57%. 43% said somewhere in the middle. They've got some features, a bit of hardening, not really using all the features. Of everyone that we polled, no one had any confidence at all. 0% said that they have fully hardened, all available features deployed successfully, and they have confidence in it. And I think firewalls are still as relevant as they ever have been. I know that the migration to cloud, and there's a narrative around how firewalls aren't as important as they perhaps used to be, but our belief is that there's still significant perimeter controls. They still control a lot of remote access and access to cloud environments, and as important as ever. So we thought we'd focus now on the management of these sophisticated devices, what features we see as the most rewarding features to deploy, and how to get the best out of that, and in the context of a managed service provider wrapper on those excellent firewalls. So if you look at some of the data around where security breaches happen, and look at the actual threat actors that are a root cause of those, whether they are phishing, whether they're malware, insider abuse of systems, actually the only upwardly trending threat actor group is errors. And I think that's going to play into what we're about to discuss around firewall management and the best use of those firewall tools, because it's where we see a lot of the errors. It's where the SOC team see a lot of the issues associated with breaches that we see in real time and from a SOC perspective. And if you break down the error types, by far and large, over 50% of them, you can see on the right-hand side slide here, 50% of those are misconfigurations. So in the context of firewalls, they are complex beasts. They require skills, expertise. They require both a networking and a security understanding and a deep understanding of the actual tool itself to actually get the best out of it. So this just shows if we've not got that under control, then you're going to fall victim, you're going to become one of these stats. And that's what we're trying to prevent here. So I'm just going to bring Aniket into the discussion here. He's going to walk us through the process of firewall management, how they're managed, and how we manage the risk on those firewalls. So Aniket, why don't you walk us through this, please?
Sure, Chris. The process starts with receiving a change request from the customer, where we usually get the requirements. We also get these requirements in a type of a sheet wherein we have all the details mentioned. But then the main part is risk assessment of this request and how it is going to affect the current network and its current configuration. So we do that with the help of our experience in the tools that we have at disposal. And post that, we have to design this change, produce documentation, so that it can be later presented in a CAP environment, or we can get the approvals over it, and the change is implemented in a 24/7 environment. But the main part here, the foundation, is we follow the ITIL process to get the testing and validation, and overall change process governance is done with this ITIL process. And main auditing part of it, post implementation of the change, we use good tools to have these validated properly and ensure that we follow the best practices.
So basically what you're telling me, Aniket, is it's an ITIL-based change management approach, which is all about best practice, putting in place the steps and the roadblocks. The gateway approval process is to say, we can't move beyond doing a major change without a proper change request. It's been audited, risk assessed. And then at the point in time that a change gets implemented, it gets audited to say, is it a success? Does it comply with policy? Going through that process before something is closed. I think in our experience, it's surprising how often customers don't go through that process. They fire in changes onto a firewall without that control process, and that's where we see things go wrong. So that's an interesting place to start, I think. So what we wanted to do is take a bit of notes from the field, take a little bit of feedback from our engineers to understand, a next generation firewall with all these complex features. Where do we start? What are the ones that we should deploy? What are the ones that we can forget about, essentially? So we're going to hand over to the team now. All
right. So the question is pretty straightforward. Do you know which buttons to press? Any next generation firewall is a very complex tool to handle. It's as good as getting into a cockpit without knowing what to press. So it's very important to really have the right pilot to take you through, and that's where our expertise comes into the picture. That's where we bring in the certifications, the right skill set in place, and you will see that from the notes of the field which our engineers have captured in this presentation.
Okay, guys. So what we got here is a graph that's designed to show what is the best bang for your buck in terms of the features to deploy. And we've got, on one side, we've got the pain, because deploying features and things like IPS and DNS sync holding and identity awareness, they can be painful, they can take time. Are they worth the investment in your time to get those things deployed? Do they give you the right gain for the pain that you're going to go through to get them deployed? So Aniket, why don't you start us off from the beginning? What have we got next?
Okay, so intrusion prevention and detection system. So this is a pretty much default feature that comes with every next-gen firewall nowadays, but then it's mostly sitting on the default settings and just enabled. But we actually need some expertise to identify and analyze how it needs to be configured very well to give us the maximum output and maximum protection of these features. So we need to configure it, and we need experts for that. And that's how it needs to be done to get the maximum reward.
So if we put the effort into tuning up those signatures, Aniket, we'll get some results, right? We'll increase the security gain there and push it up the curve. All right, here's one. Geolocation tagging. What do we get out of that? How easy is it to deploy, and what's our benefits?
Geolocation is basically when we, this is very important and very simple feature, but needs to be enabled to have, a configuration or access based on a specific locality or specific country, where you can either allow specific users from that location or block. And most of the times, blocking a specific country or specific area to access your firewalls or access your infrastructure, this is a very handy feature which needs to be configured, but most of the firewalls don't have this enabled or configured properly. So yes, this is a feature and needs to be configured for the better rewards on the security side.
So this is great bang for your buck, is what you're telling me. If you don't need to do business and talk to IPs in Nigeria, block it, stop it. It's a click of a button, a huge amount of gain for almost zero pain.
The next crucial piece is the URL content and filtering. So yeah, that's basically the proxy traffic, and the most neglected one when it comes to catering it the security needs of it. Traditionally, it has been configured just to allow the required web categories and block most of the malware or the known C2 stuff. But nowadays, this attacks and adversaries are getting very advanced, and most of these are targeted using the uncategorized websites and the new domains. So you need to tune in your URL, the URL and content filtering to block this. And the most effective way is to block the known unknown TLDs and the uncategorized websites, wherein you can just simply allow it per basis on which users need which access to which uncategorized website, and that's it. And that should solve 50% of your security issues when it comes to getting out of the network in the undetected way by tunneling your traffic through the HTTP and HTTPS protocols.
So you're talking about a reasonable amount of pain there to get that configured, because there will be some systems that are trying to communicate out over IP for legitimate reasons. You need to tune those out, but you get a huge security reward in doing so, right? And we're talking about preventing things like ransomware, Trojans, basic malware that are trying to tunnel out over HTTPS. Deep packet inspection. Okay, Annika, talk to us about deep packet inspection and the benefits and the problems associated with that, please.
Deep packet inspection is a really important feature when it comes to network security. So what usually happens is a packet may come into your network posing that it is a legitimate packet, but it might have some malformed information or virus or malicious code that may harm your network. So this is where deep packet inspection come into picture, wherein it will dissect that packet, analyze its payload, check its header to find if it is any malicious content. Does it have any virus or code that may harm your network? And it will accordingly take action. It will try to detect it, categorize it, and it will try to either block it or send it to a specific location where it needs to be treated next. But then when it does so, it will also reform the packet if the packet is legitimate, and it will also apply the necessary security features to it and then forward it to the next processing.
Okay, Annika, but a lot of people would say there's two major problems with that. The first one is that you're offloading, so you've got a certificate issue, you're breaking the chain of trust. And the second issue is you're invoking a little bit of latency in there, because obviously there's some processing that's required to do the deep packet inspection. How do you respond to that?
Agreed, but then the cost of it, or cost of not enabling deep packet inspection, could be big in case of it is prone to an attack. So if you are not inspecting that particular packet, we are actually jeopardizing our entire network by not doing it. So a little bit of latency and speed issues, I think we can manage with those. And I think most of the next-gen firewalls don't introduce that much latency when this feature is there. So they obviously must have put some thought when they put in this feature.
Okay, next we've got sandboxing. So let's understand the difference between what is deep packet inspection versus sandboxing, Annika, and what are the benefits of that?
Deep packet inspection and sandboxing is basically, deep packet inspection, we are going to work directly on the live traffic, but then sandboxing also has its own database. It has its own set of predetermined files, which actually sandboxing is aware of, whether it's a malicious packet or it needs to be forwarded to further processing. So sandboxing is much for the unknown threat, which could be potential issue and needs to be categorized as malware, which goes into sandboxing. And deep packet inspection is straight off decision right at the end of it.
So we're talking here about file analysis, really. So unpacking the file, seeing how it exploits, how it executes on the system itself, by simulating the various different OSs that it's going to be targeting. So we can identify, for example, if it's email traffic, what is that packet doing? How is it actually executing? So you wouldn't do it on all of the traffic. You would do it on certain channels where you're expecting files to be either downloaded, sent to you, uploaded, whatever the case may be. So FTP, email, internet-based downloads for those sorts of legitimate requests. Those are sorts of channels where sandboxing, I think, probably is an essential thing. It is a headache. It is a headache because it will cause you a requirement to go and look at what it's actually executing. It will send up false positives. It will say something's malicious. That isn't always true. maybe there's something unusual in the way that that file is executing. So it requires attendants to actually go and look at the file that's been executed, the report that's been churned out from your next generation firewall to say, do I think that's real or not? Because in the end, if it thinks it's bad, it will have blocked that, and you need to actually go and attend to it. So that's the pain element, but the gain is equal or even more important than deep packet inspection.
I would concur to that, but then sandboxing also has an important feature to prevent zero-day attacks, which is really important as compared to both of them. Sandboxing does play a good role for preventing the zero-day attacks.
Absolutely. Basically, we cannot allow our endpoint system to rely on the reputation of the file hash or even the firewall to do that. We have to actually understand whether that file is malicious or not in the way it executes. All right, so for identity awareness, this is going to give you a lot of security gain, because effectively what we're going to be doing here is integrating your Active Directory with the firewall and network level, so we can build policies around the group policies that you have. So role-based access control, effectively saying this user in this group or this operational unit on your Active Directory has the ability to access certain things. So granular level controls to map identity to a network access are incredibly powerful with this tool, and raise the security bar, hugely just by doing that. It is going to be a bit of a pain because obviously your policies need to be mapped to your groups, so you have to have both an understanding on your user access levels, on your AD and the network to make those policies complete. But then it opens up other opportunities as well. So if you're using Azure AD with multi-factor authentication, where you can integrate that into your VPN user traffic, so you've got multi-factor authentication from your AD on your VPN, and then once you're inside of the network, we can explicitly map a role on AD to a network access. So it does raise the bar, and policies that include identity awareness are much more much more stringent. Client VPNs are more important now than ever as we push the workforce out of the corporate environment and they're working from their kitchen tables. They're remoting in, sometimes over VPN, we hope. And a client VPN has a lot of features that we can be able to raise the bar in terms of the security, not just enable it as a means of remote access. Dio, why don't you talk to me about that?
That's well said, Chris. Yeah, and that's a very important point, especially since after the pandemic, this client VPN is something which has got great attention now, and it's important not to just configure it, but to harden it is equally important. And few things which we have to really consider and make sure that we implement is ensure that every single user who is using this client VPN, we catch his role, we catch his responsibilities, map that with the security profiles, ensure that we have the right ACLs placed and mapped to that user so that he is only able to access the specific resources when he gets into the VPN. And it's also important that you place in some jump servers so that any user who is using the VPN, he has one fixed path to follow and access the specific resources. So that will ensure that you have right controls over the client VPN, and it's not just that any random access to any user.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, Dio, that you've got two decision points that you need to make very quickly when deploying client VPNs. The first one is that if you're deploying it on a corporate machine, do you put in place a split tunneling policy where you allow both the local internet breakout as well as the VPN traffic into your corporate environment, or do you take the decision that you can only browse out via your corporate firewall as if you were sat on the LAN? That's decision point number one. And I think the tough security guys would say force everyone to browse as if they were sat at their desk in the office. But that's a decision that you need to make, and make the risk evaluation based on that. The second thing is, are you going to enforce an always on VPN? So as soon as you power up that machine, the VPN client is on the system and it's activated, and if you've got an internet connectivity, then you're on the corporate LAN. That means that things like policy updates are easier to deploy, patch updates on the system, antivirus updates if you're pushing it out from a antivirus management console within your corporate environment. So that's the second decision that you need to make, but you can only do that if you've got a client VPN with a next generation firewall on the system. So the next one is DDoS protection. What's our opinion on the effectiveness of the DDoS protection measures built into next generation firewalls, guys?
Chris, good question. DDoS protection, let me tell you, is not your first line of defense when it comes to a firewall. So, if you ask me about my opinion, I would say just turn it off. Focus on all the other features which will add more value. And in case if you're in doubt, I would say just keep it on. Don't waste time on it.
Okay, I mean, it's simple as that. Harden your systems against DDoS. If you want to, your web server should be pretty much hardened against it anyway. And if DDoS is a particular concern for availability, get a DDoS protection system or service that is actually going to do that task. Don't rely on your firewall to do it, is the message. All right, DNS sinkholing, Dio, tell me about that.
Sure, Chris. So yes, I would say that DNS sinkholing is something which is a crucial feature, but very less explored one. And it works basically by deflecting all your malicious DNS queries to a proxy address or a non-existent address basically. And it ensures that any of your end system or the host system which is making those queries is not actually able to resolve those queries, and it is bypassed to a fake address. That way it comes in between the malicious queries and stops them. Now this is something very important feature, but somehow it is not really configured in most of the firewalls, and I would say it's very important that you configure this. And it not only helps you identify the possible botnets or bots in your network, but it also will give you an idea to stop these attacks. It's not just about identifying those, but also to stop these bots.
So you're going to need to follow this up with host-based inspection on the antivirus or the system that you got to see actually what process is initiating that DNS traffic, right? You can't just allow the firewall to block it without a proper incident response process to follow up on that.
Yes, that's right, Chris. So as I mentioned earlier, this is just an indicator that there's some possible bot which is sitting out there which is trying to do a malicious query, and we have to follow it up with an incident response process. We have to do some correlation, do some forensics around that host to find out which processes are initiating this correction, to see where exactly they were trying to go, and there is some incident response follow-up work definitely required.
Okay, great stuff. Antivirus. Okay, so antivirus on a firewall. I think this has been around for a long time. The first wave of next generation firewalls, the UTMs, pushed this as a particular feature. Our opinion, endpoints do antivirus better than firewall ever can because of the level of encryption and the inspection that's required. Antivirus on the firewall, it's an interesting feature. It's not going to bring you a huge amount of value. It is no substitute for what you're going to put on your endpoint. I think, would you agree with that, guys?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so turn it on if you want to. It may give you a lot of false positives. It may give you more noise than security gain. Okay, so the AntiBot feature within firewalls is largely leveraging the reputation database that it has on bad IPs that are tagged with botnet type of clients. This can be hugely false positive. It may have intelligence that is very well out of date and can sometimes cause you more work than you're going to get out of the security gain here. So turn it on, be aware of it, don't depend on it effectively. Dio, tell us a little bit about application identification and why that is important.
Yeah, so application identification is again a very crucial part when it comes to identifying the right applications and tagging that with using the layer 7 inspection. And it all comes with identifying what applications you use in the system and tagging and getting rid of the port-based ACLs and rather tagging it with the specific applications. So it's important that if for example, if you use the Skype for Business, or if you use the SAP SAP as an application, it uses huge amount of ports which are opened if you go by the traditional port base allowing this traffic. Rather, I would say that just tag it with these applications and allow this application-based traffic that will ensure that you are covered, and only that required application traffic is passing through. And this just stops any malware or any adversaries to use these ports which are open in the firewall for their benefit.
So now you're in a position where you've got identity awareness, application identification. Those two things in tandem are a hugely powerful combination. So you can tag role-based access control to a specific application and a particular user, rather than open policies where you're just defining source and destination IP and ports in the traditional way, which allow open communication. So we can really harden explicitly what communications we're allowing using identity and application control. So the next point is logging. All of these features, mostly on next generation firewalls, need to be logged explicitly. And if you get all of these features logging, it gives you a huge range of visibility in terms of what is actually happening on the firewall, both in terms of the traffic that's coming in and out across your perimeter, but also the security alerts that are going to be generated by the deep packet inspection or sandboxing, URL filtering, DDoS. All of those good things are going to generate security events that need to be attended to. So obviously you can log. And logging to a syslog server or logging to the control panel management console itself is of little value unless you're really correlating those events. So we would say, from our perspective, logging requires proper correlation of the events. It requires 24/7 analytics. It requires people to actually look at it and understand what is happening on the device and correlate it with other elements of the network as well, whether that's your antivirus, your Active Directory, or your cloud-based systems. That's when logging becomes important and beyond compliance, and you need to do it 24/7. So with our managed firewall service, for example, it's not just about the configuration management, the auditing, the optimization of the device, but it's also about the security threat monitoring on the device by getting all of these policies logged properly, inspecting them, advising around them, doing incident response in real time, and being able to contain threats in real time as well.
So Chris, logging and SOC monitoring response, exactly what our engineers are doing here 24/7, right? Today we have more than 700 firewalls under management and monitoring. And I think that's what is required, because that's why our clients are sleeping peacefully. Okay, guys, so it's evident from the conversation which we've been having that what you have is as good as a Formula One car. A next generation firewall is a Formula One car, and it does not drive by itself. You need the team to drive it. You need the right set of analysts, engineers, skill set, a setup, an infrastructure, the software, technology, all of it. The moment all of it comes together is when you would be able to really fully utilize what you've invested in, right? Here, I'm sitting here in the Global Security Operations Center. We have more than 200 analysts, engineers, who day in and day out work on honing their own skills so that they can drive this vehicle better for you guys.
Okay, so for the last couple of months, we've been running a proof of value, which basically is a firewall audit and assessment that we're running for our customers. And the idea behind this is for us to showcase our skills and expertise, and at the same time, you'll benefit from a firewall audit where you can understand, where are the overly permissive rules, the features that you're not enabling or not using to the fullest, where you're potentially out of compliance and can harden your environment, harden the firewall, and get some better control around that. Normally it takes a couple of days for us to do this for a single pair of busy firewalls or a few firewalls. And we've seen a huge uptake on this, and it really showcases what a proper firewall management team can do with that critical security control. So if that's something that is interesting to you, if you're interested in a managed firewall service and want to see how that works and interface with the people who actually deliver that service, go and speak to your account executive, and let's see whether we can get that done for you.